Hello, welcome back. In this video, I'd like to discuss the process-based costing method. This will be the last step of our project and probably the most difficult one. Remember, this one is built upon the previous two activity. So if you have not done that, please do that first before you come over here, because otherwise when you start reading that, it will be pretty hard to understand. And of course, I'm not just describing what's going on. I will also give you example using Excel. So, however, don't just move to the Excel files because it will be very hard to understand unless you have basic understanding how the PBCM works. So, the agenda for this video is the following. I will start from the discussion of the general idea of PBCM and using the coffee shop as example because coffee shop itself is more straightforward and you already work on how to create describing the process of brewing coffee as well as the register taking order, and then we'll move on to the 3D printing using the same principle. Okay, so let's take a look at the PBCM. So I posted this one at the beginning of the semester, but I took it out because my faculty mentors mentioned that might not be the best idea to jump directly over here, in assuming most of the students know something. So we scrapped the whole project and start from the beginning. But eventually we have to move to this stage because that's what we base on. So as you can see over here, there are still 3 stages over here, starting from the process model, then move on to operation models, and then eventually we'll be able to create a financial model and calculate the cost of a product. Within the process model, we really need to know what does the product look like. Is that a single part or as assembly? Okay, so oftentimes we use bill of materials to describe what the product looks like. Not only that, we also need to know how to produce the product. Okay, so here you will see why we learn to use the flowchart to describe how to do certain things. Once you know how to describe the process, okay, you know every detail of the process, then you can move on to the next stage, which is operation model. The big difference between operations and the process model is operation focus on the resource. Process is describing the sequence. Okay, so resource of individual step, and each step is part of the whole process. So there's different operating conditions. Okay, we also have example like 5+1M, talking about material, method, machines, measure, manpower, and the last one is environment. And because every resource has a price tag, so from there we'll be able to get a more accurate cost estimation and build up a financial model. Okay, and the article down here is we are going to put that on Reginet so you can take a look. But the key principle of the PBCM is this picture. Once you know how to create describing a process starting from the left, and your process model is including the flowchart and bill materials, you can move on to the operation model, which describing the resource you need in order to produce the items or provide the service. And at the end, you can build up your financial model based on the price tag of each individual resource needed for this process. All right. So let's take a look at the coffee shop. We are talking about a very simple coffee shop. It's not going to be like a Starbucks, has a lot of items for sale. This one only had coffee, and only one kind of coffee. So it's like a coffee stand pretty much at the corners of a building. So think in this way. So if we look at in a conceptual way, you can see the coffee shop has two parts. One is brewing, the other one is serving. Okay, so the flow chart itself describing what the brewing process look like and what the serving process look like. Okay, and each one of them, some of them can combine together. For example, when you refill the water to pot and pour water to brewer, okay, when you're doing the pot rinse and cleansing, the last step over here, oops, the last step over here, and this one, that's happening over the sink. So if you merge them together because they are a loop, you can merge them together. Okay, and for these two, you can happen at the same station. So it is ideal to merge them together. Okay, and when you look at the serving, that's the same. You have a taking order process transaction, that's at the register. Okay, but this part, okay, is really on the prepping station. Okay, so there, what I'm trying to convey to you is, even though the process is designed in a certain way, have a specific sequence, okay, at the end of the day, we have to merge them into an individual workstation in your whole production line. And remember last week we were talking about production line, how to lay it out. So in the same token, we can have a production line layout for the coffee shop. Okay, this is what the production line look like, starting from the brewing setup. Okay, including the clean up the pot, dry it up, pouring water to the brewers, put the pot over there, put in a filter, and so on, all of that. Okay, next step is the coffee brewing. Okay, and then following by item prep. Okay, coffee brewing including brewing the coffee, then pour that into the thermos. And item prepping is grabbing the cup, pour the coffee, and then put on the cap and then steep, pass to a customer. So if we think about that, we can have front end, we can have back end. And you might wonder, why does the transaction happen before the actual prepping? Because we are trying to describe a process, and the layout, okay, the production line, the transaction is referring to the actual passing to a customer and collecting money. We can design the design in that way. Okay, a typical example is if you go to Barnes Noble in town, when you're trying to pick up a cup of coffee, that's what they did. They take your order, okay, but they immediately go and prep the item, and until they come back, they will process your transaction. That's how they design it, so they can move faster. What you need to pay attention to is the first three steps, they are the back end, okay, and the front end is the one interacting with customer. And for that, you can see all the different resources needed for each steps. So the tables over here shows you what the resource needed. And you can see at the end, the bottom of that has a brewing station. Okay, you also have a washing station. You have prepping station and the cashier stands. So all of that is, in a sense, we combine this two flow into one single production line and have 4 different stations. Okay, so when you're trying to estimate the cost, and oh, by the way, yes, one of you was asking, what does the project look like? If you are a graphic comm student, you probably have taken courses discussing the cost center. What we are trying to do over here is actually similar to the cost center. So your instructor might provide you all the information of cost center, how to fill in different numbers, how to interpret a number. But what we're trying to do in this class is we're trying to tell you how does the model how do we develop the model itself. Okay, so if you continue looking at that, okay, let's take a look at the financial model. So at the beginning of the semester, we have been talking about revenue equal to total cost plus profit, and the definition of that. How do you get the number of revenue? How do you get total cost, direct cost, indirect cost, and so on? You might think about fixed costs and the variable costs. Direct cost is the variable cost, and indirect cost is like a fixed cost. Okay, and the bottom line is, before we can report the price, okay, of the sale price, okay, item price. This is the item we're trying to find. We need to have a break even, otherwise we're losing money. The business is going to last long. Okay, so we are looking at zero profit, so revenue equal to total cost. That has not changed. So by doing that, we'll be able to determine the minimum item price once we know the total cost. Okay, and this is item sold. This is critical because here we introduce a concept called scrap. That means it's not every item you produce will be able to be sold, because some of them might not meet the quality standard. We also have we're able to determine the amount of profit as we adjust the item's price. Okay, so if we make it higher, then we will be able to make more money. Now let's take a look at 3D printing. The flow chart is what we discussed last week, and the picture over here is showing you, okay, what's going on. Okay, as you can see over here, the reason why I'm showing you this picture, because that gave you some ideas what kind of resource we are using. So filaments over here, and usually they come in spools. Okay, and you are trying to clean up from remove those excess materials. Okay, and then put that at the end, put that into a box. Okay, so this is the process model. How about the resource, the operation models? This is what we look like. Okay, the line is like that. But remember last week we were trying to say, okay, how many printer you are going to use in order to produce the product. So that is something you need to bear in mind. What you see over here is for a single printer. Okay, so a single printer, for each printer, you would first step is set up, and then you start printing, and the parts comes out, right? And you have different tools. That's including the hand tools, not just the printer itself, but also the tools used for cleaning, used for packing. Okay, this one person is not the same as this one person. Okay, they are the same person, the same person. And this is the print operator. So they are two different people. And more on that. Let me see. The measure is over here. So some of you might wonder, how come we don't have quality control? Because that's part of the, for each, if we are using 5+1M, okay, we are really practicing total quality management. That means each station you would have a certain way to decide, okay, are we meeting the standard or not? Are we meeting the quality expectation or not? Okay, so the other things I'd like to point out is, in this one, we only had two stands. One is the shelf, which is the print farm. Another one is workbench, okay, which is used for cleaning and packaging parts. And it could be just a 6 feet table, okay, maybe with chair. It's different from the coffee shop. Coffee shop has 1, 2, 3, 4 stands. Okay, so over here you are seeing some furniture like a shelf, table, and chairs, and we need to include in those into calculation as well. All right, So I will stop over here and then we'll move on to the Excel files. But bear this in mind, and when you reading the Excel file, you want to open this file as a point of reference as well. All right, thank you.